We need one or at least a group of people to act as a collective voice for our community. We also need resources, right? Um, we just bailed out the country from COVID, right? They're talking about $1 trillion bailout package. You cannot tell me that we don't have the ability to pour resources into our communities, right? And that's committing money to economic empowerment, not just jobs, economic empowerment for minority students. If we don't help pull people out of poverty, then poverty will continue to pull society down. Right. And so we need economic empowerment, and that's creating institutions and structures that are ran by people that look like us.
Welcome to Mentoring Kings. Where do we go from here? A look at social justice in America.
So Shaka Rawls is a young-ish African-American educator from the south side of Chicago. I grew up in a small community called Woodlawn, which is just south of Hyde Park. I attended this fine institution, Leo Catholic High School, as a young whippersnapper. Matriculated to Aurora University for my undergrad, and did my grad work at University of Illinois at Chicago, where I'm currently finishing my PhD. I'm more of a social activist than I am an educator, but I find myself as the proud principal of Leo Catholic High School, entering into my 5th year. We were in a pretty desperate spot. We had less than 125 kids in the building. We had dwindling resources from our alumni and no new initiatives that were happening within the building. And simply doing those things, right? Just turning the page on those things. You start new initiatives. I immediately started with increasing the amount of technology we had in the building. I mean, it's a pretty low bar, right? We probably had 15 to 20 computers in the building, and pretty much tripling that, quadrupling that within a year was my first goal. Second was to make sure that we started some new initiatives. So I started the new STEM initiative. I started Leo Men Read, where our students will go out in the community and read to young students at elementary schools to show them that it's cool to be active engagers in learning. We started to work with the local churches. We work with the local senior citizen homes. We were out in these streets. If we could sit here on 79th Street and say, hey, we're the Catholic school on 79th Street, but our goal is to be a part of the community. And once you start doing that, people start to notice. So I did none of it to garner any attention or to get any fame for the school. My thing is, I tell my staff, just do good work. If we come in and we bust our butts and provide quality education to Black and brown kids on the South Side every single day, people will notice and people will want to bring their kids here. We're a college preparatory school, 100% graduation rate over the last 9 years. We also have 100% college acceptance rate over the last 10 years. Not all of our students choose to go to college, but we want to put them in the best fit possible for post-secondary education. And at the end of the day, this only works because we love the boys, right? I see myself in them, and hopefully to some degree they see themselves in me. And so if they can aspire to be educational leaders or community activists, more important, if they can aspire to be that, and I provide some sense of being a role model for that, then I feel like my job here is successful. And people notice, and that's the good thing. The first thing is just being overt about the game, right? Like I firmly believe if I give my boys the rules, they will ball out, right? They can do whatever I want them. They can be the best that they can if they understand the terms and the conditions in which they exist, right? So the first thing is explaining to them what systemic racism looks like. What does the school to prison pipeline look like? What is over-discipline of African Americans and Latino students in public schools or in private schools to some degree? What does that actually look like, right? So then this is how you circumvent those situations. We have to be upfront about the conversations that we have with young folks in order to get them to understand these are the terms and the conditions in which you exist, as wrong as they are. And this is how you get around them. That's our goal, right? And if we're not being overt about the conditions in which our students have to live in, if we're not being overt about that, then they will never understand the complexity of systemic racism or the complexity of hegemony or the complexity of sexism, right? And so we got to put that up front and give them those words and let them understand the terms and conditions in which they exist, and then allow them to do what they do. And that is to figure out each situation, figure out how to get around it. They're teenage boys. They spend their lives trying to undo rules, right? So they know we got to give them the rules on the front end. And that's the easiest way, I think, the most simple thing that we can do. And the other thing, again, is just pouring into them, getting them to see that, I'm not much different than my students, right? I might be a little bit older and I might come from a different time or a different era in the Shy, but I'm still the kid from Woodlawn, and I'm still from around here. I always tell the boys, I'm from around here, and when they see that the regular part of me, then they can understand that they can aspire to be something greater. I think that mission is, or at least that vision is in front of them every single day. When you get outside, I explain to them, people don't care about black and brown boys outside of this institution. Society in general, they have systems set up for black and brown kids. It's jail and incarceration and death. Right. And so that's the reality in which we live in. That's the saddest thing that I have to face. And I'm afraid of that I'm experiencing that reality outside of these walls. And my goal and my staff's goal is to equip them with all the tools necessary for them to be successful in the next phase of life. See, the thing is that when we present positionalities as dichotomous, right? It's like you're either pro Black Lives Matter or pro cop, right? And you can be both. Right. And that's what those are the conversations we have with our boys, is that just because your opinion is different than mine, or has a difference than mine, doesn't mean that we're adversaries. It just means that we see the same thing differently because of the way you were brought up. And we can have those conversations. We talk a lot about epistemology and the way we think about things and the way we construct knowledge. When you have those conversations, then people understand that it's cool if you don't think the same way I think. And that's what's the problem with society writ large, is that we think that because your opinion is different than mine, then we're somehow enemies, which is crazy, right? The rhetoric now is so divisive. Right. And our goal is to have the same conversations, even if you see things differently, and be able to enter into dialogue. It starts with us being able to have those conversations and then saying subsequently, what do you do? So, yes, you think that, blue lives matter or Black lives matter. Then what are you doing in order to forward that conversation, forward that narrative, or to break down barriers? And that's how you start to dismantle these ideologies that Black is different or brown is different, or even that they're separate. They're not. We're all people, right? We have a commonality. We are all people. And because we're a Catholic school, we can easily bond behind our faith. We're all people that love the Lord, right? So we use it as our nexus. And then we can say, now the differences that's just window dressing. But at the end of the day, we're all the same people. And once you have those conversations, then students understand that everything doesn't have to be contentious. Everything doesn't have to be a fight. Even the way we go about educating our students here, everything is not a fight. Disciplining students is not, you say, we have a strong discipline policy. But we tell the kids to stop doing stupid stuff, right? That's the simplest way. Hey, stop. And the kids stop. I don't have to overdo it. We don't have to attach consequences to it. We give them a rationale. Stop. You can hurt yourself. The kids be like, oh, okay. And that's the way we redirect kids. It doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes there's some consequences. But at the end of the day, like thinking about ways to change behavior, start with this kind of this cognitive. I always tell my staff, discipline is cognitive, getting kids to think differently. The action comes secondary, right? So getting them to think different. It's the same way about social change. It's a cognitive change first, right? Getting them to understand how people are people first. And then the differences, the phenotypical differences, can easily be ironed out or just cast aside. You can look, I've always said this about one of the ways that we can improve the relationships between students with each other is that we can look at ways in which students can interact, have healthy interactions with each other, and still be okay with whatever the outcome of those interactions is. And I think the biggest disservice to youth, especially in the city of Chicago, was the elimination of youth athletic sports teams in elementary schools. When we took away sports, students forgot how to lose, right? And that's, if you look at conflicts are normally escalated because somebody can't take an L. You can't take a loss, right? And so if you look at it, like I tell my boys all the time, it's okay for us to take an L. I want you to feel what it feels like to lose. That hurts. And you work like hell in order for you not to lose again. Once you've lost, it's so much easier for you to have that drive not to lose again, because losing hurts. And that's the problem now, is that students don't know how to lose, whether they feel like they've been talked about on social media, or kids don't know, like, if you do something to me, then I got to do something twice as hard to you. Or it's the ideology, if someone hits you, you got to hit them back, right? That ideology is what gets us to where we have gunplay and violence and neighborhoods beefing. Everyone's trying to undo some type of hurt that they've been, perpetrated, or that's been perpetrated, right? And so if you look at that and understanding that, if you could tell kids, and I say this to my students all the time, your actions, like, I may be upset with you, but I'm actually hurt. Right. And we can get kids to expose their emotions and not be afraid to say that. I started an organization called Impact, and it was basically to do kind of what I do for a living now. At that time, it was I watched students get exercise from Chicago Public Schools. I could see attendance patterns. What students aren't on board with the education process, right? Especially in high school. I see poor attendance. I see over discipline, right? Number of suspensions. I see poor grades, and that's a perfect formula for a high school dropout. And so what Impact's job was to jump in right there, leverage community resources, kind of what same thing I do now, and try to get that student back engaged with schools, help them. I essentially created Impact to create hope for students who were disengaged with schools. I made a choice that working with young Black and brown students on the south side of Chicago was much more valuable to me than making $750,000 a year. I do regret it at times when I want to buy stuff, but at the end of the day, I just chose this as my path. And I hope that being in this position, Jay-Z always say, if you say you made me, then make another me, right? And so make another Hove. I always say that to my boys. I want to make another me. Every class that I get in, if I can make one more me, right? And I'm not saying I'm not perfect, but if I can make another person that's committed to the development of our community, of our people, then I've done my job. And I think that's really my goal, is to make more people devoted to our community. And that's why, again, I say I'm an activist, because I'm actively trying to get people to be on the same step.
Thank you for tuning in to Mentoring Kings. Where do we go from here? To learn more about future episodes, visit www.mentoringking.com and join the conversation on social media by following and liking @Mentoring King on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.